Good evening, everyone. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Jay Knopfsinger, the current president of this wonderful organization. I'm not good at IT at all, but I think you should be proud that I found a Halloween theme for the program here. So, okay. So those of you who haven't been here before, we do have a show and tell. We have several things already lined up here that people have done most of the time, and we'll be liking to show you what they did and how they did it and how they finished it and so on. And that will be at the end of the meeting, towards the end of the meeting, just before the speaker. So the next thing we usually do is to ask people who are new today. I see an old person back there, Mike. Great to see you. So new people tonight, new or visitors? Yes, sir.
Rick DeRose, and I'm probably an intermediate at furniture and toys.
I'm sorry.
Furniture and toys.
Wonderful.
Oh, we got
I'm Alan Wiseman. I recently retired, and I thought I'd start a new shop and learn how to do some woodworking.
And I'm David Galt, and I used to be a member, but I haven't been here a long time. But I'd like to get back into woodworking, and anyone interested in lutherie, I would be interested in talking to them.
So Bill Shucott usually gives a brief presentation here of the upcoming classes and presentations that we have on the agenda. So Bill, did you have another, did we sneak in a different PowerPoint here? You don't, not today. Okay. Bill?
The November safety class has nobody signed up yet. I don't know if anybody here needs to take that safety class. There's some new members here that might want to sign up for that. There are still a few classes available between now and, say, December 10th. And we are in the process of setting up and posting all the available class times for 2024. About half of those are set up, and now I'm still badgering teachers for descriptions of what they're going to teach. So that information is straggling in, but everything that is available is on the website, so take a look there.
Okay, Bill, and anybody who has any questions as we're going along, put your hand up and he can answer questions. The other thing he's going to at least mention is the fact that we had our first, what's it called again? Commercial operation that he was kind of in charge of, and it's done. So we actually completed this first project, and he can tell you a little bit more.
The Southwest Garden neighborhood down on the hill had 5 signs that said Southwest Garden neighborhood. And they don't know when they were made, and they don't know who made them, and they wanted them refurbished. We wound up refurbishing 3 and replacing 2 of them were in such bad condition. And the volunteers that contributed to that all went down there and installed all those signs yesterday. And the client has seen them. Now all we need to do is get them to pay. Oh, Vicki says, how big were they? All but one of the signs were 10 feet wide and on a piece of 2x12. And they had routed letters for all that, Southwest Garden neighborhood, etc. And what we did on the existing ones that we refurbished, we ran them through the planer because they were pretty rough. And that really did a nice job of smoothing them up. And then the new ones, we had to route all those letters. And in my inimitable wisdom, I thought we were going to do that with a stencil. Well, that didn't work out. So we got Don Turner to make templates, routing templates. And I told him how tall the letters need to be, which was 5 inches. But I didn't tell him how wide the letters had to be. So he made this whole set of templates for us. And instead of fitting on a 10-foot board, I would have needed a 14-foot wide board. So we remade a third or a half of the letters with narrower text, and got all those done. The client actually said that next year they're going to want to build some additional signs, so we're not throwing away those templates. And so hopefully we'll get some additional revenue out of that. Paul Deutsch, Carl Darcy, Tom Clemens, Tom Coleman, and me. I hope I didn't miss anybody. But all the boards got a primer and 2 coats of paint, and then background lettering got 2 more coats of a darker color. So if you're down on the hill somewhere, come see me if you want to drive by. Actually, I know one of them is right on Kings Highway, right opposite Tower Grove Park. So that one's easy to find. Some of them are on one-way streets and it's hard to get there. That's it.
Thank you for mentioning by name all your helpers, because I didn't know all of them. So I think Bill and his crew deserve a great round of applause for what they've done. Okay, next. Rich Weissman usually gives a little report on the current stance of the toy program that we have been doing for many, many years. So.
We collected this evening 184 toys, and I boxed up this afternoon 140 toys to be delivered tomorrow. And also, Shriners made a special request of something for a program they were doing for space. So one of our members sent me some plans, and I put this space shuttle together for them. And if anyone wants to look at it after the meeting, it's going to be here on the toy table for you to look at.
Thanks, Rich. Next. And Wayne Humphrey does a separate toy program, the Christmas toy program.
We're going to hit our goal of 1,400 toys. Be wrapping it up tomorrow and the next time that we meet to build toys and get everything distributed right after Thanksgiving. So we've done a bang-up job, well under budget thanks to lots of donated wood. Bought very little in the way of actual wood for toys this year. So I appreciate all the people who hustled and rounded that up. And so that's about it. Like I said, they'll get distributed. They go into the Peace Pantry, LifeWise, and Toys for Tots. So,
And Wayne, why don't you mention while you're there the Christmas Tree Festival, that because there's a deadline coming up.
Right, Shriners Festival next month at the general meeting will be the last time that we get an opportunity to donate to that. Hal's made a table to set stuff on. Charlie's got a box of stuff he's donated over here. We've got tree ornaments that have been donated, so we could use more stuff at the November general meeting. So bring that in, and we'll have to take it up there the night of the meeting because it starts the following Saturday, I believe, if not Friday night. So.
Thank you, Wayne. Any questions for Wayne? Okay. Thank you, Wayne. Many of you had the opportunity of attending our Superstar weekend last year. Tom McLaughlin presented, and so Dan Lender was in charge of planning, and he did such a wonderful job, we decided he would do it again this year. So after some difficulties to begin with our initial plan, we have obtained a nationally known person named Logan Whitmer. He's currently is the actual editor-in-chief of Popular Woodworking. So he's very known nationally, and he has decided, or he said yes to being our superstar presenter this year. Details are to be worked out. So Dan Linder is the person who is really in charge. So if you have any ideas for him, or any, if you would like to help him, I'm sure he would welcome your help in this endeavor. So, thank you, Dan. Before we go to show and tell, in my president's remarks, and in a separate email, I think it was an email from Vicki, I told you to begin with, one of my goals is to have more and more people be volunteers, and I think we've done that. I think I've mentioned in several of the president's letters how happy I am about how many people have stepped forward. Well, some things are coming up now that we're kind of ask you to look at specifically. One is we were supposed to form a nominations committee, believe it or not, for next April in September. So we've done that. So Vicki put down the officers, the 4 officers, president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, as well as 4 directors. And not all of those people are needing to be replaced or whatever, but she gave a little a description of what each of those people do in our guild. So any of you who can self-nominate or have ideas, good ideas for people that might want to fill those positions and so on, please, Vicki is one of the people on the nominating committee. She's over there. So please identify yourselves and come forward and give her ideas. So we have plenty of time, but that time goes by fairly quickly. We also talked about somebody coming forward, hopefully, to help Al Carlson. Look, all these incredible library that we have. There's over 400 books that we have, and that's not counting all of the DVDs and so on that we have in addition to that, and something new that we talked about this evening. So I think he could use some help and just putting things out. He just gave me, just tonight, a brand new catalog of all of the things that we actually have. I didn't think that it was on the, not the bylaws, but the website. It is. It actually is, but I don't think it's the current version. So I'll be working with the new webmaster and getting this out to all of you. So you will be able to look here and see what books and so on we have, and they're all here every meeting, almost every meeting. So therefore, this is also a plea for you to not only have somebody come forth as the assistant librarian and helping Al, but also to utilize this unbelievable library that we have, because not too many people actually are checking out books and so on. The average is probably 2 or 3, maybe 6 sometimes. I think last month he told me there wasn't anybody that checked out any books. So that's kind of silly. So if we have this list ahead of time, so instead of you just coming here and looking through 400 books and maybe deciding you might want one or not want one, look at this ahead of time and come kind of prepared to say, you know what, I think I would like to borrow or check out this copy of whatever. And so we can more utilize what we already actually have then. The other one that I would like somebody to come forth is somebody to help with the mentorship program. Thank you. And so John Bronson, I didn't see him here, but is John? There's John. So if somebody would be willing to help John with this program and so on, so we can get a kind of a head start and getting things really organized, because when new people come in, they're asked several questions, and one of them would you like to be a mentor, or would you like to have a mentor, and so on. and we need to be able to come forth with their desire to have a mentor, and I think we can do it better if we had a couple people helping John. So is that okay, John? So any of you that have any ideas about any of these things, either again self-nominating or somebody else that you can think of, please come forward and help us out then. Dave Christoph first. There you go.
Action, okay. Well, I've joined up this year very early. A friend of mine said, you need to do this. Okay, well, he got me in. And tonight he's sick. But I'm happy to be here. I'm a little bit different of a woodworker. I don't have the talent to do a lot of things like many of you do with furniture, but I consider myself an artisan, and I do fret work with a scroll saw. Now, you can do a lot of different things with a scroll saw, from intarsia to puzzles, all sorts of things. But I do fret work, and I like to work with live edge wood, about 3/8 to a 1/2 inch. This is a piece of cherry, and the pattern came out of Scroll Saw magazine back in 2000, I think it was. I can't even tell you who it was, but I got the pattern, so I thought, okay, I can do that. The one thing about scrolling is that you really have to watch, when you're doing fret work, the tight turns that exist. And you actually want to start turning before you get to the point that you want to turn. and so there's a little bit of an intricacy to this. This is a piece of maple. This is an Indian chief, and I couldn't even tell you his name. But again, one of my works. And this is one I did recently, but this is Baltic birch. It's an 1/8 inch, and a friend of my sister's wanted one, and I said, okay, I can do that for you. On this pattern, I use Danish oil to bring out the highlights in it. On these two, I haven't done anything yet. I like the natural look of the wood. So here I am, a fretwork guy, and thank you for your time.
So yeah, my name is Eric Smith, and I took Brad Bernhard's jewelry box class recently, and this was the finished product. So it took us about 3 full days to do this. It would have probably took us twice as long if Brad didn't already have some of these pieces ready for us. But yeah, it's very, very nice. This is going to my wife, so she's very happy with it, so I'm happy. So, but yeah, if you want to come take a look at it, and hopefully he offers that class again, and people will get to experience this and learn a few new techniques. So,
Have a music movement.
do what?
Does this one have a music movement in it?
Oh no.
Next one.
Yeah, maybe the next one. Yeah.
Alan Brown.
I use my CNC router to make a pick box for my granddaughter. She plays guitar, okay? So I made it out of acacia wood, old wood flooring that I got from, I don't know if you guys have heard of refab. Okay, so I went to refab, got some old flooring, and programmed that out, and fits together nice. And then I use my laser to burn her name and a little guitar thing on it, on the front, okay? Then I saw something on the internet, okay? That's scary, right? And it was a fishing stick, okay? And the fishing stick, basically, you put the line around here, you have a hole in the bottom of the top, and you put the lures and stuff in there, and you put corks in, okay? So this was my first attempt. And I don't know if you can hear it, but it's cracked like heck, okay? My problem was I didn't have a long enough drill press, okay? Enough depth, with a drill press, okay? So it got caught in the drill press and went whack, 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 and cracked all up. So this is my second attempt, okay? And my second attempt, I thought, I'm going to be smarter this time, okay? So what I did was I drilled a hole in 2 pieces of wood and then cut it in the middle, okay? And then turned it the inside out, so the holes are in the middle now, okay? And put some nice coloring wood in the middle, okay? And glued it together. And then, turned it, okay? And then took a hand and drilled the bottoms out, okay? So then I had the bigger holes I needed and without any problems, okay? And so then it just made a little leather thing to hold the line in. You take this off, you put the lure on, you flip the lure, and the line comes off. Okay, so that's it. And then lastly, I just did I'm a member of the Single Malt Society, okay? If anybody likes Scotch, they're looking for members, by the way. And I tried to download their logo, and I carved that with my CNC. I tried to get the picture right, and then I filled it in with colored pencil. And then I tried to put an oil finish on it, and the colored pencil comes off. Okay? So then I spray painted some, lacquer on top, and that kept it. So.
Thank you, Alan. Scott Berlinger.
I built a table for HSH, Home Sweet Home. Did one of the wonderful Freuder's oak that we get. This is my first project for Home Sweet Home. It's the second project that I've done in oak. The first project I did 45 years ago, and I had to replace my saw blade and my router bit. And this was before carbide, so I swore I would never do oak again. And 45 years later, I finally did it, all carbide. And I still took both blades up to W.D. Quinn last week and had them sharpen them for me. Also, the first time in probably 25 years that I've tapered legs. And I had an old jig that I built 25 years ago that's been hanging on the wall in my shop, gathering dust. And I thought, yeah, I ought to throw that damn thing away. And sure enough, it actually worked pretty well. So I kind of enjoyed that. And I got to tell you, the other thing I haven't done in quite a while is mill my wood. I've always usually buy surface two sides or whatever. This stuff, I thought, my God, what am I going to do with this? I took it up to the shop, ran it through the jointer and the planer up there. And if you guys haven't used that equipment up there, that's two of the most amazing pieces of equipment I've ever had the pleasure to use in my entire life. Those things were just amazing. And the only other thing, I wasn't real sure what to do with all the color, because I don't remember white oak having this many color variations. And I kind of putzed around with various and sundry laying things out, and finally came up with this kind of 45-degree angle thing. And if anybody wants to sketch an overly complicated SketchUp model, I do have a very, very, very detailed SketchUp model of this table. So first one I've done in oak in a long time. I'll probably do another one, Tom. Okay?
So somehow that got out of order, but we have a special presentation tonight that Hal is going to help us with, though.
I'm Hal Donovan. Most of you know me from doing the videos and stuff like that, but something came up, and I know Jay already alluded to it, that I'm on the toy committee, and most of the time all I do is deliver toys to Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital, Shriners, and St. Louis Children's Hospital. Well, Shriners had a request. Normally, people just tell us they need wooden toys and we bring them down. So they said they're doing an event where they needed some space-themed toys. And so I told the chairman of the committee here, and he put the word out, and nobody responded. So he took the duty upon himself to build these toys, and I know he had some setbacks along the way, and we were getting really close to the date when they needed them, and I was pulling my hair out and trying not to annoy him and everything. So, but anyway, he came through in a pinch, is what I'm saying, and he really did a great job, and they were thankful, and they came up, and when I delivered them, they gave me this card. And it's not for me because I'm just the delivery boy, but it was signed by, I think, 20 of the people who work with children down at Shriners Hospital, and they were saying thank you to you. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think I mentioned this before, and I may be wrong, but I really think that Rich is the only current member who is a charter member. He was with this guild from the day that it was developed. And 20, what was the year? What was the year? What was the year, Rich? 1984. 1984. So.
1982, if you include our meetings in the back room of the wooden shop.
Okay, thanks again, Rich. Well deserved. Okay, so when I heard what the presentation was going to be tonight, I became quite excited about it because I mentioned to Amy, that some of you have been to my house and know that I have a house full of antiques, and I like to make period furniture because I like old stuff. And so Amy, I hope I have, is it Haake? Okay, so Amy Haake, officially, her title is, she's an archivist and Chief Administrative Officer for the St. Charles County Historical Society. And she is a jack of all trades, and she does everything, and they can't do without her, that's for sure. So we're so happy to have Amy here, and I'm also happy that we have been able to get to this point fairly quickly. So you have plenty of time, maybe. So we look forward to your presentation. Go ahead, Mel.
See, I've got a little bit different title. You're going to see some homes, but really it's St. Charles history and woodworking. When Bob Ryan came and found me, and I don't know how he found me, and asked me to do this talk, I was a little bit shocked because I've never been asked to talk on this subject before of woodworking. And I thought, my God, what am I going to really talk about? Sure, I can talk about the history of St. Charles. I pretty well know it like the back of my hand, but how do I implement woodworking into that talk? Maybe if I'd known that you really wanted homes, that would have been a little bit different. But as I said, you're going to see some homes, but you're also going to see the history of St. Charles taken from the approach of wood and woodworking. So let me turn this on. So my agenda for tonight, well, first will be an introduction, talk a little bit about me and woodworking, founding and colonial St. Charles, the zeitgeist of 1830s, crossroads and growth, and then a summary at the end. All right, so I was born and raised in St. Charles County. How many of you have connections to St. Charles County in here? Okay, a fair number, good. But I've lived in New York City, in Plano, Texas, in Gray Summit, Missouri, St. Louis. Actually, I lived in the Southwest Garden District because it's very close to the garden, and I worked there. And now I live in unincorporated St. Charles. My professional life, well, I worked with young audiences in New York. They have a chapter here in St. Louis. I worked with the Hurd Natural Science Museum in Plano, well, McKinney, Texas, actually, where I was doing children's programs, but I was also doing raptor rehabilitation and programs with birds of prey. Then I moved back to St. Louis area, and I worked for the St. Louis Science Center, and then over to the Missouri Botanical Garden, where I was there for over 16 years. And my main responsibilities there were, once again, city and county programs in the education department. But when they found out that I was one of the few people that had a good knowledge of the history of this region, they put me in charge of the Doris I. Schnook Children's Garden because it has such a feature situated in the science and environmental history of this area. And then they also put me in charge of Tower Grove House, Henry Shaw's country house, And we did a reinterpretation and rehabilitation of the building. And then the last project they gave me was the George Washington Carver Garden. So I got around, but I left them because I wanted to go back to school. And then, as you see at the bottom there, I got a master's in history and certification in museum studies. I already had a biology degree, an undergraduate degree with that, and communication arts theater. So after I got my master's, I started working at the St. Charles County Heritage Museum, helped them start the museum. I really recommend you visit the museum because right now there's a great exhibit on the American Revolutionary War in the West right now. And later on this month, there is the American Revolutionary War in the West History Conference too that's going on. So after I started working with them, then the Historical Society came and asked me if I'd be interested in being their archivist. And so currently, I really work between the two jobs since being an archivist is only part-time and working with the County Parks and Recs Department is part-time too, so put the two together, and I do work full-time. So me and woodworking, well, there are plenty of family stories to tell. And then my experiences, my own personal experiences. The family stories are much more interesting though. My father, the Haakes were from the city. They were city people. And Dad knew how to pick up a saw and do some projects. Look there, he's wearing a Rao lumber apron. And look at those women looking at him. It must be the apron that he's got on, you know. That was at a barbecue, I believe. And he would make things, he would make great Christmas displays, cut out designs in Christmas displays and then light them. At least so I'm told. By the time I came around, I'm the baby of the family. He wasn't doing that sort of thing anymore. But the story to tell about him and the reason why I have the table saw picture there is because and I wasn't around for this too, but the story is told that he came up from the basement and he had a bloody hand and he went to the sink to wash his hand. And all of a sudden he says, "Oh my goodness, I cut my finger off." So my brothers immediately went downstairs, I'm told, to find the finger. You know. But actually he only cut half of the finger off, right at the knuckle of the finger. So that's a very important story that was told in the family. My mother, well, thank God she didn't have any accidents with table saws. But she was the farm girl. She was raised on a farm. And there's 2 of her prize turkeys that she raised, but she also raised chickens. And she once built a chicken feeder, like the one that's pictured here. Now, there's not much wood on there, but I would imagine the feeder part, the metal part, was what she had, and she was building kind of like the picnic table to hold it. And she told us that she got it all set up, put the mash in the feeder, had the chickens come out of the chicken house, and they immediately jumped up and it immediately fell apart. And so I had in my head then imagine all these chickens flying off of the chicken feeder. So again, you know, she was later on though very good with a scroll saw, and she did a lot of crafts work with a scroll saw. My grandfather was the real carpenter. That's him and my grandmother pictured, their wedding picture. And then another picture of them sitting in the backyard of their house. Well, that's actually their neighbor's house you see there, but they're sitting in the backyard of their house that they built on 4th Street. No, yes, 4th Street in St. Charles, pretty much the kind of the Frenchtown area of St. Charles. Now, my grandfather grew up on a farm too, and he was one of many sons who had their chance to run the family farm. He didn't do so well at it, so of course the farm wasn't going to go to him when my great-grandfather died. So he had to find other work, and that's when he actually moved into St. Charles. And he worked for the St. Charles Car Company as a carpenter, working on the wood features of the train cars that were built at the time. Their house was so close to the old bridge that they could see the glow in the sky the night that the 115 bridge burned. This was in like 1916, I believe. That's him in his elder days. I was only a year old when he died, so I really didn't get to know him. Yeah. So let's get into the founding of St. Charles. St. Charles has had lots of different names. Le Petit Côte is the name that we've given to the festival that we have yearly, the Little Hills. It's its French name. Los Pequeños Cuestos is the Spanish version of that, or else San Carlos del Missouri, and then of course the Anglicized name was St. Charles. But we all think of Louis Blanchette as the founder of St. Charles. He founded it in 1769. Now, there's a good reason why I have his head chopped off there at the very top. This is what the full statue looks like. And that's because really nobody knows what Louis Blanchette looks like. And it's only recently that cousins of his, pictures of cousins of his were found. These pictures date to the 1830s. And we believe that maybe we can surmise that Blanchette looked like one or features of either of these gentlemen. Now, there are lots of stories about Blanchette. There's the man and the myth, and the legend doesn't always match the history. But, and the stories go that he was called Blanchette Chasseur, which means the hunter. And here's a picture of him supposedly meeting with an Indian man who actually turned out to be a Frenchman by the name of Bernard Guillet. And when he first founded St. Charles, he came upon this man and a tribe of Indians. And lo and behold, he was astounded to find that the chief of the tribe spoke French to him. So he wondered how in the world this could be. And Bernard told him that he was an expatriate of France. He actually was running away from France, and he came to the New World. He met up with this tribe, and he married the chief's daughter, and of course then became the chief of the tribe after her father died, right? So Blanchette asks him, well, you live here, what do you call this area? And it's Bernard who told him that he called it Le Petit Côte, or the Little Hills, right? So that's just a legend, it's just a story. A man by the name of Myrna Hopewell wrote that down many years after Blanchette had founded the area. Blanchette was actually sent here by the Spanish to set up a settlement because the Spanish wanted to keep tabs on this river area, the confluence of the rivers. So he was actually sent to St. Charles, and Blanchette came down the river, actually, the Mississippi, and after getting by the confluence, somehow, that was quite a feat in a canoe. Going downriver then, he finds the creek area that leads him into St. Charles, which we now today call Blanchette Creek. So Blanchette was also the builder, besides being the hunter. He was the builder. One of the first things he established was a mill, a grist mill. So here you have a picture of Blanchette Creek, and what is there today, of course, is not the mill that he built, the brick building there. But a mill wheel does represent the mill that Blanchette built. Schlafly Beer is there now. The building itself had been a woolen mill, though, at one time, back around the time right before the Civil War and after the Civil War. So as a builder, too, Blanchette was instrumental in getting St. Charles to become a village because he built the first church there. Now, this is kind of interesting because in the past, so often when the log church of St. Charles has been represented, it's been represented as a log cabin that we all normally think of when we think log cabin with horizontal logs. But it was discovered that indeed this was a French chapel. Remember, he was French Canadian, so he was going to build this log church in the style of a pole en terre, or the log put straight into the ground. So this is now a reconstruction of that church. It's on South Main Street, right behind 401 South Main, and 401 South Main is Grandma's Cookies. If you've been on Main Street, you've had to go into Grandma's Cookies and get their wonderful cookies. That building that Grandma's Cookies is in was the original priest rectory and armory for St. Charles, because there was a law, a French law, that said that you couldn't take your guns into the church. So their guns would be left at the armory or in the priest rectory instead. Right. And the reason why it could become a village as long as the town had a church was that was the rule too. It was a rule under the Spanish government that if you wanted to be called a village, you had to have a church. So Manuel Perez, who was the governor at the time, he came all the way up here in 1791 and met with Blanchette. The church was dedicated, but Perez says you can't call it Le Petit Côte. You have to give it a proper name. And so give it the name of our king's patron saint, who was Carlos Borromeo. He was the Archbishop of Milan. So that is actually how St. Charles really got its true name of St. Charles, named for Carlos Borromeo. Another famous person is Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone comes in the late 1700s. I don't know, for some reason, whenever you see pictures of Daniel Boone, you always see him by a tree. Perhaps it's because of the Judgment Tree story. And here's a picture of what, for the longest time, people supposed was that tree out in the Femme-Osage area of St. Charles, right, over on your left. To the right of it is this bent tree that is the leftover, or the stub of a tree on another person's property, where the story goes was that Boone would throw the hides, the animal hides, over this to tan them. So, but the other stories dealing with Boone and wood is with Boone's Lick. The Boone's Lick was up in Howard County, and so they produced the salt, and they had to find a way to get it downriver. Well, very well, they could put it up in barrels and put it on a flatboat and bring it down, but they would have had to produce the barrels, and that wasn't so easy. So what they did was they would take logs and they would hollow out the logs, and they'd pack the logs full of salt, plug the end of the log, and then float them down river in log rafts. And there would be somebody down in St. Charles then to catch those rafts and bring them to shore so that the salt could be sold. Very important for travelers west to have that salt to preserve their foods. Something else that happened along about this time, early 1800s, was there was a trial that went on between a woman who hit another woman at a public laundry area with a laundry bat. That's what this instrument down here is. She said that the other woman had stolen her bat, and so she promptly yanked it away from her and hit her. At least didn't hit her over the head, hit her on the backside with it. But this caused such a row that it went to trial. And we did have trials even back then through the Court of Common Pleas. Right? Thankfully, she had a number of good citizens to stand up for her and say that she was a respectable woman and that she would probably never do it again. Now, a lot of people associate Lewis and Clark with St. Charles as well. Although they really didn't stay that long in St. Charles. They were there for a number of days before they left on their journey, and then they stayed for maybe only a day or not quite a day on their trip back. Meriwether Lewis especially wanted, when he came back, he wanted to get back to St. Louis and not stay in St. Charles. But here we have a picture over on the right, painted by Gary Lucy of Washington, Missouri, of the keelboat leaving St. Charles. And down below you see pictures of the reconstructed keelboat and the two pirogues that reside now at the Lewis and Clark Boathouse and Museum. And as it reads here, the three boats are based on drawings by Captain William Clark, drawings safeguarded in the Smithsonian, Washington, D.C., and references from the journals were used in the authentic reconstruction of the boats. Building them required over 16,000 volunteer hours. Captain Glenn Bishop initially spearheaded this immense project and constructing the full-scale replica boats. His vision continues to be realized today with reenactments featuring our magnificently handcrafted and highly unique fleet. The boats are used sometimes in television shows and movies. Lewis and Clark did write in their journals about St. Charles and the people in the buildings that they saw. And this is just a little blow-up of the Lucy picture showing some of the background of the buildings. And as you can see, most of the buildings are built in the French style. You'd see buildings similar to this were you to go down to St. Genevieve. First brick I know this is about woodworking, but I have to mention the brick in St. Charles. This is a picture of the first brick home in St. Charles. This is 600 South Main, and it was owned by Timothy Kibbe, and this was built in the early 1800s. I also have to mention Anna Maria van Poel, who was an artist, a watercolor artist, who came here around that same time. She was visiting relations, and she drew painted some pictures of the surroundings of St. Charles, all water related, of course. These paintings now reside at the Missouri History Museum. We have one of the oldest things that we have at the archives is a plat map of St. Charles, and I brought a reproduction of that map. It's over on the table. For people who come and nicely ask me at the archives, I will pull out the original for you to see. And these pictures here show downtown St. Charles now. All of South Main, for the most part, has been renovated. Renovations starting in the 60s and 70s and 80s, right? And all of this began mainly because of the urban renewal and also the rehabilitation, reconstruction of the first state capitol buildings, which is what the first state capitol looks like today. Here's what it looked like in 1943. And here's a picture of what it looked like in the 60s, 1960s. Missouri's first state capital, St. Charles, was 1821 through part of 1826. That's when 1821 is when Missouri became a state. St. Charles was chosen, even though there were lots of other places that wanted to be the first state capital. St. Louis wanted it. A number of other cities in other counties wanted it as well. It was stipulated that the capital needed to be on a river because its representatives, its congressmen, and its senators would have to probably come, or many of them by waterway, to reach the capital. But the main reason why St. Charles was chosen is that the Peck brothers that owned the original buildings, which was a store, a mercantile, they gave the upstairs of their store over to the state free of charge for the senators and congressmen to meet there, right? So that did the deal. That sealed the deal for that. And St. Charles was then, during those years, flooded with many more people coming in. And of course, these representatives all over Missouri needed a place to stay. They found housing in the buildings call them hotels, but for the most part they were taverns with living arrangements as well. Did the economy go up? Yes, the economy went up to a certain degree, but after the capital left and went to Jeff City, many of the storekeepers and the innkeepers and the tavern keepers were left with a lot of the bills of the representatives that didn't pay their tabs. So they had quite the problem, and there were many suits. We hold a lot of circuit court files at the archives that talk about the suits that went on for these economic people, these mercantile people and tavern keepers, to get their money back. And they got it back eventually, and they got it back from the state, not from the individual representatives. Then, starting in the late 1820s through the 1830s, was a German immigration movement, right? Gottfried Duden came here in the late 20s, and he wrote a book, as it says, Report on a Journey to the Western States of North America. Just think of that. We were considered the Western states at that time, and a stay of several years along the Missouri during the years 1824, 25, 26, and 27. Well, when this book was published back in Germany, it so attracted so many people that the influx of German immigrants coming into this country was astounding. And many of them came to St. Charles because of the descriptions that he gave of the area, especially the Femosage area and Augusta areas of the county. So it's a good book to read, but another good book to read about the arts and architecture of the German settlements of Missouri is the book that you see over on the right by Charles van Ravensway, and I did bring a copy of it tonight for you to look through. It's full of pictures of, well, let's talk about the builders, log construction, frame construction, stone construction, brick construction, barns, designers and builders. Let's not forget about the breweries too, and all the brewery equipment that they left behind, beer and wine. And then the craftspeople that are mentioned, in this book as well. Pictured is a Schneider coverlet, woven coverlet that was made in St. Charles County. These are not the Schneiders, but just to give you an idea of how this would have been made on a 4-post loom. One of the categories there said painters. This is a building that was down on Main Street one time. And I just am sort of taken with this picture and how this merchant decorated the outside of his building to advertise and showcase what he did. Okay, so about the furniture, and here I have two German names. Kunz does not equals Kunz or Kunze. A lot of people might confuse the two and think the first name is the maker of this chair, but it was actually the second name, Kunz or Kunze. After emancipation, a German farmer named Kunze gave a black youth, William, a home, a name, and a trade, teaching him to make slat-back chairs in the peasant style of Schleswig-Holstein. All right. And so these chairs are highly sought after. The Missouri History Museum has a number of them. We just received 2 of them from the New Melly Historical Society, which unfortunately lost their house in New Melly, the Kemp Hefner house. And so all of their things, all of their documents and images and maps, and what have you, have come down now to us. So we are now in possession of 2 of these chairs, all right? They have been restored to a certain degree, and they have been caned. There's the Frenchtown region of St. Charles City. And Frenchtown is up off of 2nd Street, north on 2nd Street. Pretty much the start of it is at the Academy of the Sacred Heart. Here we have 2 pictures, one on the right taken in the 1870s, the other 1880s. What I find really remarkable about Frenchtown is when you really start examining the buildings and looking at them a little bit closer, you find out that these French buildings were made by Germans, right? A lot of the brickwork on them is all German, handmade, right? So. And the French, they moved away from Main Street because they were getting pretty tired of all the rabble that was going on down on Main Street. Not that Main Street in local days and current days hasn't had its fair amount of rabble too. The north end of Main Street, especially with the bars and the things, right? I have to talk a little bit about traveling by the roads. The roads always weren't very, very good, but we had quite a number of wagon makers in St. Charles. People, immigrants coming in, they wanting to go west. They only came with their belongings, so they had to pick up a wagon and a team of horses or mules or oxen. Fill up their wagons with all the supplies that they would need to head west. And so that was done pretty much here in St. Charles. Also, blacksmiths were very prominent in making carriages and wagons as well. Well, they would have to be putting the wheels together and such. Here are pictures of some of the livery stations and buildings that were on Main Street. So, and then there would be traveling in style to one's last resting place as well. And a lot of hearses were made by the livery stations. This one was made by Feuerstein Livery in St. Charles. This hearse would have been for a child. It was all white, glassed all the way around, and on top was an angel, a carved angel. Right? Now, when Feuerstein sold this in 1911, he sold it to an individual for $11. And what this individual did with it was to turn it into an enclosure for his reptiles, which he had at the fairgrounds. Here's one of the fire department out in front of the livery and transfer company as well. And then thinking about the roads, here we have downtown St. Charles, and you can see all of the horses parked along the street, you know, where today, of course, cars park. There would be a row of stands, of posts, into the sidewalks for you to hitch your horse onto. You're lucky if you can find one of those hitching posts today. Right. Just have to talk a little bit about the Civil War. This is the old Peruke Fort and Peruke Bridge. Wooden construction. This bridge would have fed or helped the North Missouri Railroad come across. And the story that really is appropriate to tell with this is that bushwhackers and Confederates were planning on bombing and blowing up the bridge right when a trainload of Union soldiers were going to cross it. And it took a slave, Archer Alexander, to leave the Pittman farm where he had heard about this and come up to St. Charles and inform the northern office here that this was going to happen. So essentially a black slave saved a trainload full of northern Union soldiers. And then another Civil War story goes that this is the Griffith House. This house is out off of 70, west on 70, off of the service road. Would really be an extension of West Clay Road, right? And the story goes that, well, let me go to this picture first. This was from the Habs report that was done. When was that? 1930s, late 1920s, 1930s, just to show you a picture, feature of the portico in the house. But the story was that during the Civil War, there was a group of militiamen that were coming back from Warren County, and they were drunk. They were done with the day, or done with their work, and so they'd gotten themselves pretty loaded. And as they passed the Griffith house, the dogs owned by the Griffiths took out after them. So a number of them shot at the house. They were really shooting at the dogs, but they missed the dogs and they shot the door of the house. And the story goes that the bullet is still lodged in that door to this day. Right. Which came first, like the chicken or the egg? Was it the locomotive or was it the bridge? Well, actually it was the locomotive, but it got over into St. Charles on a ferry, right? There were tracks were laid. Actually, the locomotives went all the way up to the river, but there was no bridge, right? So the locomotive had to be carried across the river by a ferry boat and then put on the tracks on our side of the river, right? It wasn't until the 1870s that the bridge would be completed and built. And so here over on the right is a picture of that. And I'm skipping over boats and all the steamboats and such, but one has to say that they burned more wood than they were built with. And wouldn't you know, before there was a bridge, there was a pontoon bridge. So here you have pictures of a wooden pontoon bridge, all wood save for the pontoons underneath that it floated on, that connected St. Charles and St. Louis County, basically, over in the Bridgeton area. People would walk across it, or carriages would go across it. People would have their pictures taken on it. But it didn't last. Maybe it lasted all of 8 or 9 months, because when the river filled with ice and floated down the river, the ice floated down the river, it broke up the bridge. So why would I be talking about bridges? Well, I have to talk about bridges because of the amount of wood that was used in their construction. Holding them up, over on the right-hand side, you see all the wooden pilings that are really holding up the trestles. Down below, this is the entrance of the, really the 115 bridge onto the Adams Street area in St. Charles. And once again, I'll put a picture of the fire that happened in 1916. And they say, of course, this was the bridge that also had a trolley car going across it. And they say, though, that the fire started because of the pigeon droppings that dropped onto the tracks, and then the friction of the trolley setting them aflame, burning the wooden bridge. St. Charles Car Company. If you're talking about trains, you have to talk about the car company. After the North Missouri Railroad, which would become the Wabash Railroad, got fed up and got tired of St. Charles. And the reason why they got tired of St. Charles because the city council put their foot down and said, no, you're not building a train bridge that goes through the middle of downtown St. Charles. They really wanted the train bridge to go the route that the 115 bridge took and go right into Adams. But the city council wouldn't have it. So it was almost overnight. The North Missouri packed up and left St. Charles. Well, that left a lot of people out of jobs. So what were they going to do? Well, they decided, they had the area where the North Missouri was used to be building. So they turned it into the St. Charles Car Company. And here you see buildings up on the right-hand side. That building specifically was one of the carpentry buildings for the cars. And a picture of a group of the workers. And here's a picture. The same picture again that I put with my grandfather, the St. Charles Car Company, giving a list of all the various types of cars that they would be building. The St. Charles Car Company then would become ACF Car and Foundry, and building many, many train cars that were sent all over the United States. A lot of them were used in St. Louis. Both the outsides and the, at times, quite elaborate interiors of these cars. A lot of woodwork done on the inside of these cars. And then we also have to talk about the trolleys that were built. These are all pictures of trolleys that were built. This top picture on the left, that's Sacred Heart Academy in back of this picture here. Right? And when talking about ACF, I have to talk about a table that was down at the archives for a long, long time until we decided that the St. Charles County Heritage Museum could rightfully make use of all our artifacts better than we could. So this table now resides over at the museum. But It's an inlaid table, and I have more information on it over here on the table. It is made with 180 pieces of woods from all over the world. And these woods all came basically from leftover pieces from making the interiors of train cars. Right. Building a boom town. Here are pictures of downtown St. Charles. Dirt roads are mechanized roads, perhaps. That's where you put the gravel down and then you have a steamroller and spread tar down and you run over it with the steamroller. Here's a house that still exists on Main Street. This is the Newbell McElhenney House, 625 South Main. Originally, it was basically a 1.5 story house. Newbell built that part. McElhenney bought it and came along and finished it and built the upper floors. It is this house that the society owned for a while, and actually down here on the floor, I brought this along because at one point the society had a baluster society too, or a club. Those gentlemen, a lot of the work that the restoration on this building that the society did was all done through volunteer. And so this whole piece speaks to that on the floor underneath me. So a lot of the fancy work that was done on buildings, of course, were done by woodworkers. And if you're doing woodwork, you need lumber. So over on the right is a picture, or rather the left, is a picture of a sawmill. And below is a mobile sawmill that would move around from place to place and mill logs. Right? Over on the right, that is the Hackman Middledorf lumber store. Up there on the right-hand side, that's a picture of the interior of the office. A wonderful old potbelly stove sitting inside where, of course, they'd warm themselves by. Other lumber yards in St. Charles. I especially marvel at the fact that Rao Lumber Yard was right down on the river, lower right-hand side. You see the high water there. I wonder how much lumber they lost. Right? Where there's lumber, there's furniture. St. Charles at one time had multiple furniture factories. It was a furniture factory center at one point. On the right-hand side, upper right-hand side, is a picture of a furniture factory. And of course, where there's furniture, there's antiques. And St. Charles has its fair number of antique stores as well. But transitions from furniture to undertaking, a marvelous thing when you look at these old pictures. Down on Main Street, there was Steinbrinker's Furniture. But he was also an undertaker, because furniture makers would make coffins. Yes, and eventually furniture makers and lumbermen would go into the mortuary business together, right? That's why you would eventually have Hackman Bowie for funeral home, which then just became Bowie, right? So this is what Steinbrinker's looks like sort of today. It's in pretty much disrepair, but it has been bought and it's going to be renovated and it's going to be turned into a catering service. So here we go from furniture store to undertaker to caterer. Yeah. So as a summary, Woodworking is often intertwined with the history of a town due to its foundational role in construction, economic contributions, cultural significance, and ongoing impact on architecture and craftsmanship. Understanding a town's woodworking history can provide insights into its economic development, cultural heritage, and community identity. So if you want me to come back and talk about just the houses and buildings, you know, I'll be more than happy to do that. I probably wouldn't have to struggle so much. I want to tell you a little bit about the Society and the Archives. Our mission is to foster an understanding and appreciation of all aspects of St. Charles County history and genealogy. And if you would, check out our website. It's very interactive. Of course, if you're a member, you can do even more. I have brought membership information. All right. So thank you. All right, now. I want to mention, I brought along some copies of this book, which are free for the taking. I didn't know how many were going to be here tonight, so I didn't bring one for each of you. But if you come over to St. Charles and you visit us, you can come into our building. I'll take you on a tour of our building, and you can pick up one of these for free. And then also, I'm giving your group a book for King Crossing Country, and another one, The Bitter Divide, how you want to utilize these. If you want them to go into your library, I think that's a wonderful thing you have going on there. We don't do lending of our books and materials. You know, that's the difference between us and a library. We have people come in and do research. And then the other thing, as I mentioned before, the American Revolutionary War in the West History Conference will go on next weekend. So we actually have a group of Spanish dignitaries and perhaps some people from France coming as well for this conference. It's kind of interesting to talk about how important the Battle of Fort San Carlos, which happened in St. Louis, was to the American Revolutionary War. And actually, it was more the Spanish that were helpful and instrumental in that than were the French. So, okay, questions?
Yes. How do they determine, ACF, when they brought in the different materials to build the cars, how do they determine what woods to use, who brought them, how did they get them here?
Oh, boy.
You know anything about any of that?
Okay. So see, now here's an example of a question. Like, I get asked lots of things, and people assume because I'm an archivist, I know all the answers. I don't. But that's something to look into. There are lots of people who are historians of the St. Charles Car Company and the ACF, and as a matter of fact, part of the AC archives sits at UMSL's Mercantile Library. So they actually may have the answer to that question there.
I was just curious what happened to ACF Car Company, and
Well-
what is in that building today?
Okay. Well, as such, ACF does not exist, but American Railway does, which took over. And they do have, there are buildings still there, and they are occupied. American Railways does have an office in St. Charles. But a lot of the Foundry building is now the Foundry Art Center. A couple of the other shops have been turned into things like indoor tennis courts. There's climbing walls, things like that going on. And who knows, the archives might eventually wind up in one of those buildings too. We are in a historical building, 101 South Main. It's the old City Hall Market, well, City Hall, yes, and before that it was the City Market and Fish House. Then it became City Hall. Isn't that appropriate? You think of politicians and fish, you know. So. We only lease it from the city. We get 25-year leases, and we get it for $1 a year. But as you well imagine, it's an old building, and so we have lots of expenses on the upkeep of it. Now, the city takes care of the outside. They do the tuck pointing and the roof, things like that. But we're responsible for a lot of the inside. We've put in new windows because of all the heat that, and we were losing. And because we hold so many important documents, we have to try to keep, you know, our moisture, our humidity levels even and such. So that was quite an expense and such. So yes, our lease comes up in 2026, so the city may very well have us move, and it may be in the AC area that we'll be moving to. I don't want to think about it because, yeah, moving everything, you know, so.
Any other questions for Amy?
Well,